Hello and welcome to another We Are Developers Live. It's Wednesday again, and we're actually getting ready for the vacation time, I guess. Like we're sorting things out for the end of the year, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what our guests and other people have to say about that as well, because it's crazy times, isn't it, right now? Like everybody just wants to like finishing off for the last end of the year, and you can't connect anybody. And America right now is kind of offline with Thanksgiving happening.
Yeah, it's definitely a busy time of the year. And it's funny you say that, actually, because I was just doing the kind of summaries, the best of kind of live shows of the year, because we've got a few shows that we'll mention later at the end of the year that will be kind of in the can, pre-recorded. And it's amazing to look back and see some of the things that are kind of out of date now, that have changed in the last sort of 10 months, 11 months, and some of the conversations that are kind of exactly the same that we're having around AI and things like this. So yeah, it's been an interesting year, definitely. Fast-paced.
Yeah, chasing all the models and all the things that got released and like all the news about this company buying that company and this one, it's like it feels so tiring. I mean, like I go through like about 20 different newsletters and like about 600 feeds every day to actually collect things for the Dev Digest. And all the news is like company so bought so and got investment from that for this. And you're like, okay, what does it mean? Like, have they released anything I can use? And you're like, no, it's all about like keeping the hype cycle going. So it's really fascinating to see that.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think there's a few things that you see where some of these big headlines, I remember one that I saw in the best of was about the 200 billion euros that had been invested by the EU to look at AI infrastructure. And I don't think I've really heard about that again. And that was at the start of last year, really, or this year, sorry. So yeah, like you say, there's lots of news, and some of it you think is going to be like really important and a big step, and then it turns into it's just another headline showing the hype, really. So yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes so inflationary as well. Like, I mean, the numbers are just like, okay, like, I mean, people started talking about unicorns as companies, and now they're decahorns, like 10
Right.
billion investment kind of thing, or 12 billion investment, and you're like, this is just numbers on a screen by now, isn't it? Like that, there's no value backup on that stuff any longer. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, 12 billion, you can buy a few countries in Africa and make everybody happy there with that. Like it's bizarre how this money gets thrown around, but I guess what can you do? Anyways, we got a guest today as well. We got Jan Deppisch coming for us, live from the wonderful city of Krakow, where he's on holiday. And how are you doing, Jan?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really doing good. I was happy that I made it in time. I was traveling in the morning from like the nice mountain region in south of Poland called Zakopane. You might know the city from the Winter Olympics quite some years ago, I think. So I was in the middle of winter wonderland and arrived by train in time in Krakow. And now I'm just before checking into my room, and that's the ideal time to join your podcast. Yeah, so really looking forward to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like the Polish trains really run on time and stuff. Like compared to the German ones, I was really impressed with that. I did the Code Europe thing 2 years ago, where I did like 4 different Polish cities in 6 days, and we just traveled by train from one to the other, and that actually made so much more sense than flying. It was really, really good.
Yes, and it just works, right? So I mean, I'm coming from Germany, so I'm used that stuff is not working with the trains, right? So I always wonder if things work smoothly in Germany. I think, what is going wrong? It's everything is working. Something must be
Not,
off, right? So, but
yeah,
in Poland so far, it's good.
I
Yeah.
guess not invested in decades because we wanted to sell cars, or I don't know. Like it's an interesting bit that kind of stuff, and it's also it's such a weird thing because the prejudice of German, the positive prejudice is that we're very much on time and organized, and we
No,
prove with everything right now that we're not.
exactly.
I mean, I will say this is relative though, because my experience of Germany is things just work. So, it's coming from the UK where, as we said, trains are very expensive and are never on time. It's all a bonus for me when I go to Germany. I love it.
At least there is announcements. They're in German. That's the problem, but there are announcements. I
Yes.
mean, I remember like sitting in a tunnel in England for like 20 minutes with no lights on the train and no announcement whatsoever. What was the occasion? Just deal with it. Like stiff upper lip. Don't complain about it. Just mumble in your when you're showering later on in the afternoon that everything's broken.
Yeah,
I don't know.
sounds like a kind of escape game, you know.
Yeah.
Find
I
your
mean,
way out.
my favorite announcements ever was that they couldn't drive because the wrong kind of leaves were on the track. And I'm like, what's the right kind of leaves
Oh,
on the track that
really?
trains don't derail? Or what kind of leaves were they? Like banana leaves? Like how big do they have to be for a train to be an issue? So that was a really bizarre one.
Crazy.
And yeah, cool. So Jan, you say that's Artist Day. What does that mean? Like, what kind of artist are you? What do you do?
Oh, that's I think it was at the end of the 90s, when I thought, okay, I want to order a homepage. And then I searched just like what is still available, and I found myself like having a nice mix between like the technology part of the web, you know, and but also the creative part. I was building my first personal homepage, which got me my first job when there even was no CSS at all, right? So I don't know. I think with Photoshop and I did something to show my hobbies, you know. And then I was like on a kind of this, I think, kind of German GeoCity thing. It was called home.pages.de or something.
Okay.
And yeah, and then I just found out, okay, this Netzartist.de is free and it really fits like with me, right? Connecting technology, creativity, curiosity. And I'm happy that I still have this. So, and this became my handle for like most of the other channels as well now, right? So it's on the same on LinkedIn, on GitHub, and I don't know, Mastodon.
Hmm.
And
I
it's
remember
still
free.
like, yeah,
I remember FreePage.de was one of the big hosters back then.
right.
Like, yeah,
Yeah, right.
that basically where I put my first page up in 1997, I think, where it basically was a
Yeah,
tutorial. It was tutorial how to learn HTML was my first page that I built, and I'm
yes,
like, okay,
yes,
that's weird, but like, yeah, and it had a frame on top where it showed an ad, and you could actually do, and when you knew JavaScript, you could actually do a frame breaker to actually
yes,
hide the banner, and then when they found you out, then you had to undo it for a day or something.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. This this
even back.
this was great times. Like I sound like the old man, like old man's talking about like the browser wars, you know.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of the same age, and I think we made some similar experiences with starting in the web. I think I got a copy of this compendium called Self HTML. And I think I got it on disks back then, so I installed it from like multiple zip files, right? And to
Mhm.
learn HTML with it, right? So I
Yeah,
was
it
not
was.
always online back then. It was like tricky. My parents also sometimes wanted to do some phone calls. You know what? Really?
Yeah.
So I could not be online all the time. And then yeah, I had
Yeah,
this offline medium.
self HTML was 9 MB back then. I remember. Yeah, you
Yes.
had to spread it over like
Yeah.
5 different floppy disks,
Exactly.
and the third
Exactly.
one was not readable, and you're like,
Yeah.
damn it, you gotta
Exactly.
go back to the office and download that again. Like, yeah,
Exactly.
and it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Good old times.
that was on a Windows 3.11 machine, and getting into the DOS mode to just do zipping on the command line. It was just
Oh yeah.
really tough back then. Like,
Yes, yes, yes. Especially like a multi-file zip file, you know, like 10 zip files and unzipping it. Yeah, it was really.
I mean,
How should it work?
the syntax is still mental, like the whole xtarg thing. Like, yeah, if you do that by
Mm,
hand, you gotta love Unix, I guess. Talking of which, let's take a look at some of the resources. I want to talk. You sent a few things through. We want to have a few things that I just want to cover quickly, which I found interesting. Amazon cutting more than 1,800 engineers in record layoffs, despite saying it innovates faster. And it was interesting to see that it actually hit engineers this time. And there's an article as well in the newsletter on that coming out on Friday where Forbes was analyzing that it's not actually about AI replacing workers or work, but actually investment going into AI rather than people, and that's why a lot of people get rid of their engineers. And I guess it's a pretty short-lived idea. So hopefully that will bounce back. But if you're looking around, there's probably lots of Amazon people for hire that are actually really good people. That because I always found like it's not connected at all. These mass layoffs are never about the productivity of the people. It's a business decision most of the time. But yeah, it's tough to see that like in that amount of numbers people are being axed. Normally it's like salespeople, or it's like people that we think are easier to replace by AI.
Yeah,
But
I would this is like a kind of a boomerang, right? Which will probably gonna happen, right? So I hope that companies like Amazon see that maybe it was not really kind of useful to like lay off 1,800 people, and I think at some point in the future they might regret that decision, at least for the amount of the people, right? So maybe they want to get at least 800 back suddenly because maybe we need some seniority people or experienced people, whatever the title is, to maybe cope with what is being done with AI, right? So, but that's just my personal perception. Yeah.
Well, another thing that people said is that during COVID, people overhired. So basically, because everybody was dependent on computers out of a sudden, and like needed to be like the systems had to react quickly. That's why Microsoft came up with Teams, because everybody used Zoom, so they wanted to have something similar. So during that time, a lot of engineering companies hired like hell, and now they're basically saying like, oh, we don't have enough jobs for these people anymore. It's just, yeah, it's weird, but. The other thing that I found interesting, that's Mozilla is actually saying that it's now reinventing kind of itself to become a company that does to AI what we did for the web. And I mean, I worked at Mozilla for 4 years, and I was a big fan from the very beginning. I think it's the company that made the open web happen. It utterly failed to make the open mobile web happen, with Firefox OS basically not landing at all. So I was wondering what it could do for AI. It feels like AI is just a money game right now. Everybody spends more money than they can actually make with the stuff that they're building. So trying to make an open AI space would be interesting to get Mark in and talk to them, Mark Sermon, to see what he means by that. But I think we need somebody like Mozilla. I wonder if Mozilla is the right player to do it, or if it has enough bite still to do it. Now, Dan, we talked about this one yesterday, which one of the weirder things out there.
Yeah.
Meta has a Vibes feed, which is basically a feed only with AI slop generated things, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm trying to make sense of it, and what I mean by this is, you know, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Is kind of what came to mind when I saw this, because we are, you know, we all have the access to create AI images. We can all look at them; they're everywhere on LinkedIn, and all I can see that this does is kind of consolidate it into one place. I'm assuming the idea is that, you know, if we're on this app and we're consuming interesting, maybe, you know, imaginative artwork, that then we're more likely to generate our own using Meta's models. So I get that it's kind of part of that wider funnel to just bring you into using their models. I just don't know why you'd use it every day. What's the hook? What's the reason I'm going back? I think there's 2 million daily users at the moment. I'm going to predict that that's going to be way lower in the very near future, because I just can't see why you would go back. But maybe I'm old.
No.
I think I like it that it says like this is where the AI stuff goes, rather than just like poisoning the rest of the feed. But at the same time, the rest of the feed is full of AI slop as well. So I'm not sure how that is. Is this for bots to talk to bots? It feels weird.
Is it maybe kind of A/B testing, you know, to see how people consume content? Do people really see what is being really purely AI generated and what kind of not is? Maybe that's also kind of experiment that they run in a way. I'm not sure.
Interesting.
Could be, but I mean, a company like Meta spying on people, I don't think so.
No, for sure not.
It was interesting also that they announced last week that they're actually getting rid of the share buttons, that the share button functionality is not going to happen anymore, which was interesting because, I mean, purists of the web like me hated the share buttons in the past as well, and said, like, why do you actually put third-party JavaScript code into your page just for a button to say, I like this page, where it could be a REST API call, which is basically, it had REST API URLs to do that as well. But these share buttons were basically spying on people everywhere in the internet. And now they're shutting it down. It would be interesting to know why, because that's free information gathering, right?
Maybe because they also realize maybe we just have too much JavaScript in the client, and maybe it's getting a bit messy. Maybe we can find other ways. But I think there was more like a business strategic decision behind that rather than a technical one, right?
I like the amount of like dead share buttons of like systems that don't exist anymore or don't stumble upon, dig, these kind of things. Like you see these dead buttons everywhere where people just like, yeah, no, and every SEO person was then like, oh, if you really want to get found, you need to put these share things in there, and you're like, oh god.
Exactly.
It's good to see that it died, but it's actually sad that it had been around for that long. Now, Google made a big splash with Google Nano Banana Pro, which is like their new. I mean, can we get more sillier names for these things, please? It's just like.
I know.
I liked it. I liked it just because of its name. It's funny, you know. It's what did they drink when they came up? Like, how was the naming session? Normally, naming things is hard, and I think that this was a 2 minutes decision. Let's go. Any objections against using banana? No. Okay, let's use it and go for it. I like it just because of that.
Well, I like that the JavaScript engines in Firefox were always like different monkeys. There was like Spider Monkey and Jaeger Monkey and these kind of things. And then so the WebKit team or Safari team came up with a JavaScript engine called Squirrelfish Extreme.
Really?
Yeah, and that was just really, really amazing as well. You're like, okay, fair enough. It's maybe a joke that went too far. I'm not sure, you know, but it's interesting to see that. And Gemini 3, there was like a best practice on general usage, how to prompt it now. And I found that interesting, like the instructions should be up front, and that it's a good way to actually get your prompts to get the best results in a few lines out there. And yeah, I mean, to go back to the other one, I mean, I hate with a passion that they actually make an official announcement like that as an article on X.
Yeah.
X is not an article platform. Is not meant to. This is very, very flaky. This might go away in a second, and I'm quite sure they have it somewhere else as well. But it just feels really weird to actually go into this place to make a public documentation on something. But I guess who am I?
I was expecting to read that on google.dev or something, right?
Yeah.
Or I have like the main link which they promote for the google.dev page, but not Twitter. Like I also cannot access Twitter. Like I got rid of Twitter, I think some years ago when the whole thing started, right? So I used it since 2006, and I'm happy to not follow any link going to X anymore, right? That's for me just a no-go nowadays. Yeah.
That was an interesting paper as well, that you basically, if you ask an LLM to give you information that it shouldn't give you, it doesn't give you the information unless you ask it to write a poem. And as a code poet, I absolutely love that. Like that's just like it works. That's the weird thing.
Did you try?
It feels like yeah. Why would it? But like it does. I tried to come up with a dirty limerick for it, but I didn't. I wasn't able to in short time. But like it's interesting to read that document, and also why is PDF okay and HTML experimental? But okay. But the idea, who came up with the idea to ask it for a poem?
I mean, it's the experimentation, though. It's great, isn't it? That somebody thought of that, because I think I tried something the other day where I was asking it something and I knew it was just going to, you know, say, I cannot advise you on this or whatever it was. And so I did the everything we're about to discuss is purely hypothetical. And even the names that we mention, even if they relate to the real people that we're talking about, it's purely coincidental. I was almost doing what they do in films, you know, where any connection between the names and likenesses. And it just sort of went, yeah, okay. And then it would talk about real people, but as if they're hypothetical. And I thought that's the equivalent of just saying we're going to have a real conversation, but then say allegedly at the beginning. You know, it was the fact that it was able to just sort of have this parallel reality running alongside. It was that easy with a line. Yeah, crazy.
Okay, really crazy. Yeah, sure. But I really like. I just stumbled upon this HTML experimental. That's really that's so strange. like HTML is way beyond experimental nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm clicking it, wow, I've just opened it and it looks like it does go to a yeah, some kind of archive where it just displays it as HTML. I don't see what is.
Oh, really?
It's,
Okay.
yeah, it's about as basic as you can get when you look at it. It's just HTML. No idea. Maybe it's the LLM.
I guess
I'm sure they use.
I guess it's scientific papers get sent in as PDFs to be actually printable. That's a thing, and then they actually have some PDF.js to turn PDF into HTML. That's why it's experimental. I guess that's the thing that goes on there.
Yeah.
This was also interesting that somebody looked into like different programming communities on Reddit and found that like anything that has to do with a framework is much bigger than anything to do with a language.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder why though.
That was, I guess people get stuck with like, how do you do that in React? I mean, if anything, it's basically a sign that the documentation, the official documentation of the tool is not good. You know, like when people get stuck. I mean, when I worked with the docs team in Microsoft, they basically said like, we keep it very much like not inspiring, not fascinating, because the docs are the last straw when everything went wrong. Like basically when you're just like, as developers, we should be good developers and start reading the docs first, but we don't. We just basically, we try things out, and when we mess it up, then we go there. The same when we get any new electric thing, like a mobile phone, we turn the thing on, and once we manage to actually lock ourselves out, then we start reading the documentation around it. Like,
yeah, I think that's also in our nature as developers, right? So we don't want to read stuff. We want to get like our hands dirty on things and try things out. And only if things break, then okay, let's read. Yeah, but still, like it's basically similar to my perception that like people nowadays focusing a lot on like the frameworks because they have a huge like ecosystem, you know. You like I once saw a picture of, I think, roadmap.sh, like they showing this kind of graphs, what is front end, what is React, and if you dig into React, for example, it's a whole universe. And of course, it takes time to get into that, to read about hooks and states and whatnot, exactly that. And like in my talk at the CD Web Dev conference last week, like I also showed a picture and like exactly that. If you stay here for a second, if you take a look, how less is talked about HTML, CSS, JavaScript. These are just like those yellow boxes on the first hierarchy level. But if you now would check like direct roadmap, it's like on another page, I think. So this is a whole thing on its own, and that's really like concerning me that yeah, most people doing front end nowadays think it's about, of course, knowing a framework, which is good to know. Of course, you should know how to work as a framework, but it seems like the core topics, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, are just like tackled maybe a bit later once you did your thing within a framework, and then okay, I need to do some CSS now, right? But yeah, it's my perception of it.
No, I think we had this 2 sessions ago where somebody said, like, if you're a React developer, you start as a React developer. You don't even go back to HTML, CSS any longer, because you're so ingrained into that market, and you're so ingrained into that thing, and you probably chose it to get a job. Like the job descriptions look for a React developer. They don't look for HTML, CSS developer. It's also when you talk to other conference organizers, and I talked to a few in America that were just like, basically there for the money. They just said like, okay, we want to do developer events to make money, and if you want to make money, you have to make a React conference, not an HTML conference, because that's where you get sponsorship, because companies want to get their name attached to React rather than their name attached to best practices. That's the weird thing there. It's like, I guess that's the bit where we kind of lost against that because of branding rather than just like because of like the technologies below it, and of course the pipe dream of like, oh, if you use that, you're going to be super effective in 2 seconds, rather than like, but like much like, I guess jQuery were the first ones to do that when it said like, write less, achieve more.
Which I loved back then, I must say. Yeah, but
simple message.
yeah, like I just thought about like a project situation where we were asked, okay, what are our requirements like to get another developer into our team? You know, what should be the experience of the developer? And we said, yeah, we using Svelte. So basically, JavaScript, CSS, the web fundamentals should be enough of knowledge. And then the answer was, no, we cannot provide you Svelte developers. We can give you React developers, but not Svelte developers. And we were like, what? So I think this explains a lot as well, right? So there are different, I don't know, different perceptions about what is like a solid knowledge in the front end nowadays, right? And from my experience, if you have a kind of seniority, you're not junior anymore, right? Then, yeah, maybe you should be, you could expect that you have the flexibility to work with any kind of framework, if it's even a framework. That's another discussion, right? Is like, for example, Svelte a framework, or is it just like syntactic sugar, like they say, right? It's maybe just a library. It's a helper thingy. Also, the compiler is different, of course. So it's from my perception, it's not comparable to one of the bigger frameworks. And that's also the tricky situation of smaller frameworks they have, right? How they can stand out against like the big ones. And in general, I like the healthy competition between the frameworks and libraries. I think that this did a lot in the last decade, but still there's like it's often like black and white in my perception, right? So if it's not React, for example, or Angular, then you need to find good arguments, also to find good people, right? Also, from my perception, there's not much real difference. Yeah.
Angular just got released as well, a new version from Google. I
All right.
didn't know that they actually do that. That's the other thing. Like the big frameworks are actually owned by companies. I mean, React is Facebook, Meta, and like, and that's the other thing that comes behind it. So basically, like through the back door, people think by becoming a React developer, I probably will join Meta sooner or later and become a millionaire and then have a cool car or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting. I love when people take different approaches. I love this getting across this video the other day where she's basically teaching you how to actually learn JavaScript in 2 hours by rewriting Super Mario. And I love that it says super simple with a 2-hour video. But it seems like people are very excited about the way she does things, and I love that basically starts from scratch and goes to it bit by bit how to actually learn, play the game and how to get it started. And I think
I mean, compare that, Chris.
Come again?
Just to compare that there, so if you think about the approach we were just talking about, that like framework first, you would skip over, you'd skip over so much of that, and that's such a great course, because I feel like looking at it, even just the timestamps, you're getting so much that you take forward into a framework if that's the way you want to go. I don't know why you would want to sort of muddle everything into just learning JSX, and then you don't even learn the difference between HTML and JavaScript. It's kind of this to me is a great way, because it's a fun outcome. You've got Mario, we've all grown up with it, nostalgic, etc. But more importantly, you've got building blocks that you can take forward, rather than trying to take the shortcut and just build something with a framework that's, you haven't really learned it, you've just built it. So I like this. It marries the two together, learning and building. Cool.
I mean, we should invite her and actually talk to her. That might be fun. I don't know where she is. I mean, the name sounds Polish. London, UAE, Poland, test GP. Yeah, let's see if we can reach her. Might be fun, yeah. Cool.
This reminds me a little bit like back then. Like now, I'm really talking like a old man, like in the 80s. How I got into like coding, if you can say that doing basic is really coding. I mean, that's a different thing. But we just wanted to rewrite games, right, or code our own game, and that's like this gamification and this playfulness. This really got me into like the whole curiosity, right? So that's like how kids learn things, right? They wanna learn from others, they take a look, and then I think this approach is really nice. It's of course different than doing a real world project at some point, right? Of course, no one is doing Super Mario in JavaScript nowadays to earn money. These are rare cases, I think, but that's a good approach, right? So it's the playfulness, and
I think
you can do that.
In one of my first jobs, I wrote like a Pac-Man for the Deutsche Sparkasse back then, like for one of the Sparkasse things. Like they had a money muncher, and then you had to do like, and that was one of the first things that I got paid for back then, and it was just bizarre. And that these, I mean, there was a DocType magazine coming out the other day as well that you can get on paper that has HTML for you to type in. So, you know, like the old basic things, or, you know, the whole assembly hex code thing. So somebody printed that one, got a lot of people to take part. This is really cool as well, because it's using the URL up here to play Mario in it. So you can actually press up and then.
Whoa.
And you basically play in.
Amazing.
Okay, that's annoying with the music. But yeah, it's basically he's just using the hash of the URL and does like an ASCII Mario there. I remember there the PO1 guy that was working with me in Mozilla in Microsoft as well. He did a Defender of the fav icon, where you had a shoot 'em up game inside the fav icon itself, because that can be dynamic as well.
What? Who thinks of that? That's amazing. Who thinks of that?
I want to see more of these things.
Yeah.
But I think the problematic bit about that Mario in the URL is that it probably really poisons your history. Like you have like lots of messy history going on there then. But yeah,
don't use the back button.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I had a thing that I wrote. Yay, I wrote some code again. Which I found interesting that in the at Beyond Tellerrand, one of the speakers, Andy, anyways, Piccalilli Andy, he basically said that he needed to shuffle a grid and move that around every time the page loads, and he wanted to do it with the least amount of with no JavaScript whatsoever. So his solution, because JavaScript is flaky and doesn't work, so his solution was to actually use 11t and basically build it every half hour with a different order, or like every 10 minutes with a different order. So when when the client reloads the page, the order of the grid would be different. So the different departments would be the first one in so to say the carousel of the grid. And yeah, he also said like that that's always a demand from the customer to get like the different parts of the company shown as first, and end users will never ever reload the page, so they wouldn't know. Like that was really a bit of a waste. So what I did here is I thought about, okay, you can rewrite the grid every single time with inner HTML, or move the DOM elements around, and all of that is rather, it's iffy, and it's actually it's heavy. So what I've done instead is I take the item order as a CSS property, and do the order of the grid itself. Like grid and flexbox both have an order, which is the visual order that's different from the order in the DOM. That might be an accessibility issue, but in this case, I don't think it's too much, because the order doesn't matter. So it's not really like a problem that if a sighted person gets a different order than somebody who just gets the cache for the screen reader. So, the trick then is to actually set them all to 1, and if you set one of them to 0, that will be the first thing that shows. And the whole JavaScript I had to do was that then, to basically just, instead of doing any accessing of the grid elements, I just rewrite the CSS property on the parent element. And I haven't seen that done too much yet. I think I found myself rather clever in this case, because it's the same when jQuery people say like, okay, you just do every UL put this class on there, or every UL put this class away from that, and I'm like, I just put a CSS class on the parent element and let CSS deal with it. Exactly. And this is the same kind of thing. So it would be interesting to do some proper performance testing on that, what's going on there. And of course, I also talked about the CSS solutions that we have, that there is this random functionality that is in the CSS spec that only works in Safari preview, but none of my Macs were new enough to actually try it out. But there's also this really, really wild one that this person here does with an add property, which is, the math behind it is this, that you basically can simulate a randomness between 0 and 1. And he's using that for a lot of like stuff, but that becomes this completely unreadable thing here as well, and needs a property. So basically, it's again, the browser support is not as good as we think it might be. But I found that kind of like accessing CSS properties, I found a really useful idea. There is no standard way of doing it. There is no API for it. You have to write the style element, or you have to get computed style on the whole element to get the custom property.
Yeah, but that's fine. I mean, I would also be interested in like the performance, some performance measurements on that, but you would not need like you can do it with this vanilla JS, right? And it's just working fine. So and I also didn't see also like around like my sphere, so to say, in like with other colleagues or so. I didn't see it that much, these like reassigning custom properties via JavaScript. That's really powerful, I think, and someone should really dig into that. And the performance topic is the only thing, but it's really smart. And I also like that it's just working with CSS. I'm just sometimes a little concerned about is CSS getting more into like a programming language, kind of? Like you just mentioned, the readability might be an issue at some point. Is it code in CSS, or is it just like some mix of attributes? Like the boundaries sometimes are getting a bit blurry. And I'm not saying that's bad or good. So it's just like, it's a different CSS we use nowadays, and it's really powerful. And I think you need to, juggle all these possibilities, right? So there are many ways to do things, and I'm always having a hard time to follow these developments. Like, even so, I'm really like on the edge, I would say, with what's going on. But still, that's can be also a bit challenging because it's so powerful nowadays, and not many people know it, or not play around with it even, right? So I like these kind of experiments and show it to the public to inspire people as well. Yeah?
I think it's a fallout from the web principles. Like when we basically when we came up with HTML5, we had the core idea of like that we don't want magic anymore. We don't want an app cache. We don't want a video element that's just a video element. We don't know what it does under the hood. We want events for everything. We want attributes for everything. We want to have granular access to the web. And CSS has gone that way heavily into the past. I mean, with like layers and with like transitions, you're going into a space where even in JavaScript, you didn't have access to that stuff. That was basically coming from the C++ from the browser back then. So we want to get more granular access to the rendering. But yeah, it comes with complexity. And I too, again, might be an old man that whines that it was much easier in the past. But I like the idea of CSS just being there to make the look and feel, and JavaScript to do the animation stuff and like anything that needs calculus. I mean, there's tan, cosine, and all these things in CSS now, and it's tough to keep up. I mean, Dan, what about you? Like, have you given up on CSS already, or what's going on there?
I love it more than anything, I think, to be honest. But I was just thinking it goes back a little bit to the frameworks for me, because I think that, you know, what you were saying then, Jan, about, you know, it's starting to turn into a programming language in itself. And I think some of it in my mind is actually just the concept from frameworks of like the state, that the state can apply to anything, right? It can be your logic or your stylings. It could be your inline styles that you're, you know, it becomes very hacky and very fluid, and it means that those boundaries and lines between this is CSS and this is your internal logic that's more to do with your usability and functionality, it all gets merged. And so I don't know whether it's that CSS is responding to that, or with, you know, variables and things like this feeling like they sit in between CSS and programming. But no, I actually think, Chris, when you showed me variables, it was more of a feeling of like, oh, this is great, because CSS does sometimes feel a little stale in that we all have certain properties we use and certain ways of doing things. And when you showed me CSS variables, I was resistant for a bit because I thought it doesn't click for me yet. And then when it did, I had the same thinking as you, Jan, where you said that's really powerful. I've got some concerns, but it opens up so many possibilities. But yeah, again, I feel like it's the framework effect, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's interesting you don't have to use everything, but that you had a really good point there, because there is a debate about like it's not CSS variables, it's CSS custom properties. If you take it right, and you're like, and that's the kind of like that's the kind of smart aleck remark that you would get from like people who want to have the open web to be used. That means like, you know, as a junior developer, you come up and say like, CSS variables. It's actually it's custom properties, and you know, and that's the kind of mannerism I've seen in web people, or in people that actually are about the basics about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We sometimes are too dogmatic about these things, and that is actually offensive to new people. Whereas the React community is always like, yeah, okay, you come in, you can do whatever. I remember when the whole discussions were about JS linting, like, you know, like, okay, we have to have a semicolon at the end of each line. And then somebody came up with JS hint because the JS lint was too strict. And you're like, oh, for Christ's sake, why? You know? But yeah, as I said, there's no standard way of doing it. So basically, this is my tool method that I'm using for setting properties and reading properties. It's not much, but it still feels so weird that you have to get the whole cat computed style, which is a bunch, just to get the property. And because that one is basically reading all the state of the thing right now. So that will be an interesting one if we could think about the web in the CSS working group. I would talk to a few people because I know a lot of people who work in there. But I think it would be so much easier to just have an interaction API rather than having to do this hacky reading out what the browser has done and then finding it out again. But on the other hand, some HTML is bloody amazing. Like this one is basically a one-time code thing, you know, two-factor authentication. And this is all the HTML that's necessary for it. And I found that actually really, really cool. Like input mode, numeric autocomplete one-time code, and max length is 6. And that one gives you that like a pattern that splits it into different characters. That way, instead of something that you would have to create lots of input elements to do it, I found that a very, very interesting way to do. And
wow,
that's powerful. I love that.
Okay, is it working across all major browsers? This one-time code?
Yeah, I think it's basically in baseline.
Baseline. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, nice. Need to save that as another bookmark. Great, yeah.
Interesting though that max length is basically not allowing a user to actually type in things more than 6 characters. But in JavaScript, you can paste in things that are longer than 6 characters. So you still have to validate on the server side. That's a problem. But that was only not across all browsers. Safari cuts it off, but others don't. But I think there were a lot of people gave talks about the input element being this like so overloaded thing, because an input could be 32 different things if you actually look at the spec.
Is it that many?
Yeah. And I love that it's actually that it's progressive enhancement. Like, I mean, if input type tel is not supported, then basically it's a text element. People can type in whatever, and you still need to validate on the server anyways. But if it's on a mobile device and it realizes the tel, then it actually gives you the keyboard that is only the telephone digits rather than the other keyboard. And I love that. I love that about like semantic HTML, that you basically, here is what the browser does for you if you just give it the right attribute. But instead, people have like 12 npm packages and 6,000 components that do the same thing. But it's rather clever.
That's what I like as well nowadays. Like maybe 10 years ago or so, if you need like I don't know, date picker and things like this. I'm not sure if this was even, I think this was already in HTML5 back then, but you need to have so many polyfills and custom JavaScript to make it work. Nowadays, it's like working differently depending on the system and the browser, but it's working for all the users all the time nowadays with not much really clunky JavaScript at all, right? So that's really great now how the web evolved. Yeah.
And I mean, there's the UX of date pickers is, I mean, there's a whole discussion around that. I mean, my favorite is when you have like the years as just a scroll back and you're just like, yeah, I'm old. Thank you for reminding me.
Exactly.
Just like, no.
Let me type it in. Let me just type it in. I don't want to use a date picker at all, actually.
No, I have the stuff stored in my browser. Basically, let me pre-fill it. Rather than if it's an input type that has a name of date or a type of date, then the browser pre-filling will work. If it's called React component 6000 classes to get like the different things on there, then the browser wouldn't know what it is. Now, the only front-end stack we should talk about, what is it?
I don't want to spoil it. The people should read it. Don't scroll down. Okay. No.
Well, you
I
got
had
one
some.
like and one repost, so it's already a massive success. So
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. I need to think rebuild the page with my custom web mention setup. Let's see. But yeah, I had some thoughts. Like at the CT Web Dev conference, we had a talk called Back to the Future, and I think the social media fitting title was "Old Web Standards Make Us Feel Young Again." And yeah, I had some really nice conversations at the conference, and this is the link list we provided, which fueled our thoughts for the talk. And like my message here would be like we talk a lot about whatever frameworks right nowadays. So if we come to like tech stack decisions in a project, for example, what tool should we use, right? And sometimes it's a 2-minute decision between two engineers. Let's use React objections. No, okay, let's go for it. Or Angular, whatever, right? And I think we are losing with that focus in our conversations as engineers. We lose the focus for our users because whatever the tool you use, browsers always render basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript nowadays. That's what they do. That's what they were made for. And yeah, so HTML, CSS, JavaScript is maybe the only thing we should talk about in terms of, okay, that's what is being executed later. We can use whatever tool we like in like for the greatest developer experience, right? So this can be anything nowadays, which is just working fine for the team and for the project requirements, right? But at the end, this must work as proper HTML, CSS, JavaScript. That's like in a nutshell the article. So shifting the focus away from talking about specific frameworks or libraries, getting more into the user perspective and think about, okay, is the HTML we produce with whatever tool really working? Do we do really accessibility testing, for example? And do we check also the HTML? I think Jens Meyert recently wrote an article that like saying that HTML might be the most complex programming language if we take a look how many web pages fail because of invalid HTML. So it seems like we struggle with HTML, it seems, right? And maybe we should shift that focus. So this was my like condensed thoughts after also the conversations at the conference. Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing. HTML cannot fail. It basically it doesn't throw an error. It just basically then renders a div or renders a block element when it doesn't know what you gave it to, or an inline element in this case. But it's I found that really bizarre when we got into the mobile web back then, because out of a sudden, instead of just thinking like you just said, like no matter what you use, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is ending up in the browser. Like, let's focus on optimizing the outcome, like what gets sent down the wire in the end. But instead, we then wrote lots of tools to actually pre-compile or post-compile, and like to use analyze your CSS and only give you the first CSS be above the page fold, which doesn't exist on the web ever. Like but we then went into a whole spiral of tools after tool to undo the bad things that React has done, to just render the fast performance optimized version of it. And instead of just thinking about like what's the outcome, because it seems like people don't see the web as a compilation target rather than a publication platform. And I think that's the problem. And that's also the post that you had here from Alex Russell, where he says about the same thing, like that. He says that like the median mobile page is now larger than a copy of Doom, and the P75 page is larger than 2 Dooms, and so on and so forth. And he posted that when he was at PerfConf in Netherlands, or Perf with an F, not with a B. But yeah, it's interesting to see that there's a whole specialized community came out of that to optimize code that was generated by a framework that makes you more effective.
Yes.
It feels like our job is undoing bad things rather than just writing.
Exactly, just preventing doing things in the wrong way, right? So I think maybe I'm just old school nowadays, but whenever I start a project, like when everything is clarified and I know what to do, then I start with HTML, right? So this progressive enhancement, maybe it's part of my like old school front-end DNA or so, but I always start with like static HTML. And if that works, I will add maybe some CSS and then enhance it step by step. And the challenge nowadays with frameworks, libraries, also they have, of course, like in general a useful purpose, I would say, right? So they abstract away a lot of things. I don't need to reinvent the wheel all the time, things like that. But like I always need to like challenge myself to not get sucked into this, okay, do it like the framework expected to do, and do some HTML optimization later, like fix it, but just like let me do my step-by-step approach, HTML, CSS, and maybe vanilla JavaScript. And if the requirements, even after like challenging also designers, do we really need this complex state picker? Like how often do we challenge design decisions? That's another discussion, I think. But only then I would go to, okay, maybe then I can use like parts of a framework, right? And that's, I think that's a challenge nowadays, right? And that's I see as a contrast, right? We should focus more on HTML, CSS output, but the tooling makes it a bit complex. It shifts our focus away. Yeah.
I mean, I'm wondering as well, the compiling that comes with it, like you're saying there, the amount that it gets bundled into React, and if maybe you decide to install React in your application because you want, or essentially add it to what is an HTML, let's call it what it is, kind of not so much an application in that way, but you're installing React, bloating it massively for maybe the one feature, like you're saying there. It could be making the single page transition. It's very simple in React compared to at the moment. It's a little bit trickier, fiddlier on the base, on the platform. So it's kind of those simple decisions that we make maybe later down the line because we want to add one small feature that then we're actually increasing the size of our into an application that's massive. For that one feature, because when you said, Jan, use parts of the framework, that's so difficult to do. It's kind of install it all and use a small bit. Yeah, it's wasteful.
Yeah. Well, that's what we did. Like we had these tools that basically use the framework and then analyze in a very, very brutal fashion in the browsing rendering engine how much of the JavaScript has not ever been executed, and then take that away from the bundle size again. And you're like, why did we put it in the first place? Is my question. But it's convenience. And I don't know any framework that actually is modular. they're all basically, here's the kitchen sink and start with that whole thing. The only one I remember was the one I worked on was Yahoo User Interface Library. That was basically a base class, and then you loaded the different classes in as you needed them, and the different components already loaded in things as they needed them as well. So it was all like progressively enhanced. But yeah, then jQuery was the big competitor, and jQuery won because it's like, yeah, do whatever you want with it. And here's one selector that looks really short, but is an absolute nightmare in performance. But people don't care, like,
Yeah.
you know.
Exactly. It helps us to get a job done somehow, and for the rest, we mostly don't care.
It's interesting that people are now coming up with ideas that AI browsing needs new elements. So there's a tool and a context element that somebody came up with that is for AI browsers, and they had like a hackathon going on. We might actually invite them as well to talk about this. But I find that, yeah, of course, scraping is tough, and that's why AI agents scraping websites is actually very expensive and also like legally questionable. But it's interesting that we now think like, okay, let's put some extra HTML in there to help the bots, and that feels just wrong. I don't know. It's like, yeah, and especially, yeah, of course, you can always invent a new JavaScript, a new HTML element, but like going through the process and going through the W3C to propose it would have been the interesting thing. I guess that's how Angular happened, that they came up with their own elements. But that was a fascinating one to see.
That's interesting because, like, I would assume it's like it doesn't make like it makes more sense to that the AI, I don't know, bots, they adapt to what they see in the web and to get the proper content and things like this, and not that's our job to add a few like AI related HTML tags now. All right, it's, I don't know, feels a bit weird. I need to read it. Yeah.
I mean, if we find a way to make it useful for other people as well, to assistive technology or something like that, then it might be an interesting proposal.
Sure.
But I find, but yeah, I agree. This should be on the HTTP level with like a redirect on the server to the right thing, rather than like. But again, like even if you have a weighted model, like Wikipedia offers, they come scraping. That's basically the first thing. The first thing any AI company does right now, write a scraper, and yeah, it feels. Yeah, would be interesting to see. Having an article element helps as well. I've seen that LLM bots basically go for that one rather than for the rest of it. So that would be another helpful thing. But yeah, I think it feels the wrong way around to think about HTML. Like, let's do something for the machine rather than do something for the user.
Yep.
Now, you rebuilt a tool, Fruity Frank. What was that about? And did you start with HTML on that one?
No, so my idea was, okay, I want to challenge AI. If AI really can make a game, because I have like exact requirements. So this is like a remake of an original game from 1984, like a commercial game. I was using the Amstrad or Schneider CBC back then. And this was one of like my favorite games. And I had the idea, okay, is AI capable of recreating that with JavaScript? And I'm using also like the Phaser.js framework. But my idea was, I just do it by prompting. I don't want to code it. I want to see how far I can go with like my super clear requirements. And I had like, I think it was over months, and I'm still not there yet, but I had so many like experiences with AI, right? I started like with some baby step prompting, and then I saw it was looking nice, but under the hood it was totally failing, breaking apart. Then I was throwing my code to another AI model, I think Gemini back then. And Gemini said, well, who the fuck did that? I said, yeah, this was, I think, Claude back then. You know, I don't know the model. So it was like, for me, a fun way to play around with different AI models, because like coding a game with JavaScript with AI, I think is a bit of a niche thing and maybe awkward topic, but it's really also different than just do another ragged app, right? So that was the scope which I set to myself, and I had so much fun. Even I had some, lots of moments where I thought, okay, no, I do it by myself completely. But I had the same fun, like letting AI code it as I had when I was playing the game actually. So I couldn't stop myself doing that in the last few months, and yeah, now it's going further. Like I use the exact assets from the original game here, the exact sounds, and it's not like much beyond the original game. I have many ideas to extend it, and I really want to go full end-to-end, so to say, to have it in some maybe game store at some point, just to try it out, how people react to that. And yeah, now the current scope is to, like I heard that nowadays you need to tell a story about the game. You know, back then when we played Pac-Man, there was no story. It was just like, yeah, you are the character, survive, right? And nowadays, I think we need some story. Who is this guy? What's his job? So I will focus a bit more on the visual aspects. And I also think that many people don't are into that nostalgia stuff that much. So exactly, this was like also. I think you also played it, right?
Yeah, that was the original Boulder Dash. That basically, because I mean, what I found about yours, what I found weird, but Boulder Dash, if you were under the boulder and you moved away and it fell down, so basically there was gravity, so it was much more dangerous to play that game.
Yes.
So yeah, but you didn't have any gravity in yours, so I found that weird. So that's already a thing we need to write a trainer for and hack it.
Yeah.
But yeah. But yeah, it's fun to take something that old school and ask a machine to do it, because a lot of training machine learning we've done. Remember there was this endless Marios where basically they asked the machine learning model to actually play Mario and actually fail and then learn from it to actually play the game in the end. And there was there's even artificial intelligence in Pac-Man and these kind of things. It's fun to just play with those bits but yeah, the story around it, that's actually, I think it was weird because there's great videos about Tomb Raider when they came out of Tomb Raider, and then basically they got letters from people in Japan asking about the backstory of the lady. So basically they came up with all the there was a request from the users to actually come up with this backstory about it. And then I mean, there was a Battleship movie, so who are we argue about that nowadays?
Exactly. Yeah.
But there is also in the Internet Archive that has a really good series right now about the 1 trillion web pages, because they had 1 trillion web pages indexed in the Internet Archive, and they interviewed a lot of interesting people. I love this Erin Malone lady that basically talked about how they built the Kodak's first website in 1994, and that was much earlier than anything that I've done, and I found that really interesting that nobody talks about that. Whenever we talk about the nostalgia of the web, we show the Space Jam website.
Exactly. Or Amazon website.
Yeah. So I think that's a really, really cool thing to do. Well, I mean, yeah, that was a lot of fun. So I think the broken we have broken front end culture for sure. I think we've broken the web. I mean, the other day I was taking a screenshot of trying to read a newspaper article, and it was only ads and only things to click away, and I was just like, okay, I cannot get to that article anymore. What's going on here? So I think advertising was basically killing the whole thing, and I said that a few times on the show before. I found that ad blockers, privacy blockers like third-party cookie blockers, no issue at all with them. But ad blockers started an arms race that was actually it was killing the web that it is right now. Because I mean, when you have an ad blocker installed, it basically tells you, oh, you have an ad blocker installed. Do that. Can you do that? It's really like an endless race of against blocking showing ads. Because somehow, somewhere, somebody has to pay for it.
Yeah.
It's sad the state it's in right now, and I'm not ready to give up on it yet. I've always fought for the open web, and I think we all should. And I love that Mozilla is taking on that AI thing right now. But I think the rest of the web, all we can do as developers is build good stuff, and build and not do it to show off at conferences, but just do it in production. And that way we can probably save the web in the long run, hopefully. Any last words for you, Jan, about to our community? What do you want people to do?
Get back to the boring basics. Learn them, embrace them, and mix them with our modern tooling, and think of the user. That's the main message, right? So we have so many opportunities nowadays. The web standards evolve so much, and yeah, think about the user. That's always my main message. And also, as a developer, you should not like stay in your like developer experience bubble always, but also challenge decisions, bring the web forward, contribute, challenge others. Yeah.
Cool. Any last words from you, Dan?
I mean, I couldn't put it better than that. You know, just what I like is we say this every time, Chris, that, you know, we love when we have people like yourself on, Jan, that are, you know, we can see your passion for coding through the fact that you like to build things, you know, sometimes for fun, sometimes for work, and everything in between. So yeah, I would say don't forget why we do it. We should enjoy this and have fun, right? So it's nice to see somebody who clearly is. So thank you.
Yeah, tomorrow we're going to have an event that is for people that bought tickets for the Congress already and people who are part of the developer community, but we're going to take the videos out there as well. It's all about performance and AI. So we got like people like Stoyan Stevanov that I used to work with in Yahoo as speakers, Raymond Camden, and a few others that actually will be out as videos as well. So if you haven't got a ticket for the Congress, if you have one already or you've been there, then you will have gotten an email today about the event tomorrow. So that's going to be me 4 or 5 hours in front of the unicorn tomorrow. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of stuff that we saw today that actually makes a lot of sense just to play with the basics. I mean, that thing, that few lines of HTML that gives you that one passcode thing, I think that's kind of stuff that I want to see more. I want people to explore more as well. Now, I got one question for you, like, which one is the most monetized Avenger in the Marvel universe?
Oh, don't ask me. I'm not into Marvel.
It's the Hulk with a giant banner.
Oh, man.
And with that, we thank you very much.
Okay.
And we see you next week. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.